Another day of the winter meetings has passed, and Garrett Crochet still has not been traded. But a major free agent signing and a former Sox pitcher could impact Garrett's trade market that I'll discuss on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the New York Yankees gave a boatload of money to Max Fried, and I'll discuss how his signing and MLB Network's John Morosi floating the Red Sox could be interested in Dylan Cease impacts Garrett Crochet's trade market. Then let's discuss some players the Sox could take in the Rule 5 draft today. And finally, it's Wayback Wednesday, so let's revisit the last major trade the Sox did at the winter meetings involving a pitcher when Lance Lynn came to the South Side. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So if you're in the camp of Boston being the ideal trade partner for Garrett Crochet, Max Fried going to the Yankees helps the cause because he's signing with the Yankees for 8 years and $218 million. The Yankees outbid their longtime rival for the left-handed starter's services. Obviously, a bit high in terms of years for a guy who will be 31, when the 2025 season starts. But he's more of a command guy, and sometimes that ages well. Also, Nathan Eovaldi, he's going back to the Rangers, so another pitcher off the second tier of free agent pitchers. And again, that would have been a fallback maybe for the Red Sox entertain. So that's one more option off the table. And obviously those two off the board helps Crochet's trade market significantly because the last that you consider in the tier of elite free agents, Corbin Burns, he's the only one remaining. And MassLive.com's Boston beat reporter Chris Codiolo said Boston is readying an offer. But if you're in the camp of Baltimore and Boston being the best fits for Crochet, you want Burns to either go to the San Francisco Giants or the Toronto Blue Jays. However, there's a new wrinkle that has emerged in the Crochet trade market, and it's old friend Dylan Cease. MLB Network insider John Morosi floated that the San Diego Padres are willing to trade Cease, and he tweeted that Boston is interested in acquiring the Sox former ace. So obviously that is so White Sox. You trade Cease because you didn't want to extend him, and then he might potentially impact another ace pitcher that you just developed and that you drafted too. And that might impact his trade market as well, because the other team is going to turn around and trade Cease for more assets. So White Sox. But, in terms of Crochet's trade market, it's not going to impact it too much just because, let's say Boston does pull off the trade. It just takes off one trade partner because there are still plenty of teams reportedly interested in Crochet. But again, if your team Crochet to the Red Sox, it sounds like they're still on the periphery. And this is from Cotillo. According to a Major League source, however, the club has not been an aggressor when it comes to a top trade target, Garrett Crochet, who the White Sox are actively looking to move. Other clubs like the Yankees, Mets, and Reds have been more aggressive to this point. Boston has also had talks with Seattle about acquiring a young starter like Brian Wu or Bryce Miller, but has been unable to gain much traction. Tristan Casillas has been part of these talks. So again, that's another, maybe Seattle's willing to give up Wu or Miller. That could also impact Crochet's trade market. But again, there's still about 10 teams, listed for Crochet. It's just, who are you in what camp in terms of your power rankings for Crochet? Obviously, I have had Boston at the top, although the Cubs definitely would be now at the top for me. But Boston is in my top 5 of ideal trade partners for the White Sox. And, with these other options emerging, it's why I continue to feel that Crochet is probably going to get traded if at the winter meetings. It's still an if. I don't think it's a when. It's a when this offseason. I'm thoroughly convinced the Sox are very, very motivated to trade Garrett Crochet, much like they did with Dylan Cease. I have a feeling Garrett Crochet most likely, though, will be traded either later this month or February or even during spring training. It's very hard for me to see the way that Chris Getz has been talking that he's going to be the opening day starter for the Chicago White Sox. But Cease possibly being on the market can throw a wrench into things. First, he has a more established resume than Crochet. 4 seasons of throwing over 160 innings, 3 of them with ERAs under 4, 4 seasons with a FIP under 4, 3 seasons where his F4 was over 4. And 4 seasons where he struck out 210 batters or more. The only thing the Sox can counter with Crochet is this year's All-Star appearance and 2 years of club control, with him set to possibly earn $2.9 million. That's according to MLB trade rumors. Cease is obviously in his last year of ARB, and MLB trade rumors projects he will get $13.7 million. So right off the bat, that's one reason, when some people are like, well, why would the Padres want to trade Dylan Cease? This is the last year of club control. And if you just saw Max Fried, even though he's a lefty, get 8 years, or heck, even Frankie Matas get a bag of money for 2 years, you can bet Dylan is probably willing to go to free agency, especially since he's going to be 30 when the 2026 season starts. Year behind Fried. So he could probably, if Fried can get 8, so can Cease. So Cease comes also with an established trade market. You pretty much can't counter, what the Padres would want to say, because the Padres have already given up the trade market for Dylan Cease. They just gave up 2 top pitching prospects to the Sox before the season started. Also, Burns, with 1 year remaining of control, and he had a Cy Young, he was traded for 2 top 100 picks and a draft prospect. Tyler Glasnow yielded the Rays former top 100 prospect Ryan Peapot, and another prospect, Johnny DeLuca, who's ready to contribute to the big league level. So it's an established market. There's no questions. You can't go back and say, well, if you're the team trying to trade for Cease, well, I'll give you something less because he's only got 1 year of club control. If you're AJ Preller on the other side of the phone, be like, hey, Burns just still got 2 top 100 prospects. Tyler Glasnow, with all his injury problems, he yielded a former top 100 prospect, and the only reason why it was a former top 100 was Peapot graduated from that. So you have an established market where Crochet, there's still some question marks. Even though I believe he'll be productive pitching 160 innings or more, especially with his new training regimen, sounds like it'll keep his left arm healthy, he still has not even reached the 160 innings limit. Last year was his first year last season was his first season as a starter. So you still got those teams probably hemming and hawing, being like, well, he only threw 4 innings after July. August was a struggle. Did he run out of gas, even though September came back and pitched really, really well? Now, the reason why Morosi threw out the Padres wanting to trade Cease, and this is what he tweeted at John Morosi: multiple MLB teams execs tell me prices for free agent pitchers are high and relatively few clubs are willing to pay them. This creates incentives for contenders to listen to trade offers on their starting pitchers. Framber Valdez is one, Dylan Cease is another. And then he followed up: I do not believe a Dylan Cease trade is likely, but AJ Preller has shown he can move impact players, e.g. Juan Soto, as a way of relocating payroll and then making the playoffs anyway. All right, so at first, you're thinking, okay, maybe, again, Morosi's just throwing stuff on the wall, hoping it sticks. But then San Diego Union Tribune's Kevin Acee followed up with the Padres being willing to explore options. This is what he wrote: but the Padres are also cognizant of a budget in a way they were not for when late owner Pete Seidler authorized spending that saw the franchise rise to his number 3 in expenditures on players in 2023. Their payroll for 2025 will be higher than last year's $169 million, but the teams aim for it to be less than the current projection of $210 million, according to people familiar with the Padres' plan. With that in mind, the Padres are exploring possibilities that would lower their financial commitments while adding talent. Among their numerous conversations at this week's winter meetings are some of the other teams regarding starting pitcher Dylan Cease. There's no indication any deal is imminent, but this is more than just fielding phone calls. League sources characterize the talks regarding Cease as being anywhere from trying to unload Cease to the Padres being open to trading the right-hander who turns 29 later this month and is projected to make between $13 and $14 million in 2025, his final arbitration eligibility. Although, again, if your team trades Crochet to the San Diego Padres, especially being the top partner, get this from Acee: while trading Cease would thin the Padres starting pitching depth, They would still have Yu Darvish and Michael King at the top of the rotation, and Randy Vasquez and Matt Waldron as their other experienced starters. They are pursuing Japanese sensation Roku Sasaki and are confident in their ability to add another mid-level starter. A haul for Cease could even enable them to flip prospects and or young major leaguers for a top-end starter such as White Sox left-hander Garrett Crochet, who would be cheaper than Cease and is under team control for 2 years versus the 1 year before Cease hits free agency. I mean, leave it to AJ Preller to trade one premium asset and then use that return to get another, because he did that with Juan Soto, and that helped him get Cease in the first place. And what does AJ Preller have to say about the speculation? This is from AC, and I also saw this on, I think it was the San Diego local radio station shared this video on Twitter. This is what he says, quote, "It's been active. It's been a lot of conversation. There are a lot of things that were there that we're weighing, considering. Some are more like kind of exploratory still and going down the path. Some of the things that we can end up lining on. It's that time of the year where you're always going to get incoming phone calls when you have good players. This year has been active on that front," end quote. And when I was watching the video too, Preller kind of, obviously had a poker face on, but he was speaking very glowingly of Cease. And it doesn't sound like, he's a guy that would be really motivated to deal him, especially if you've got the Dodgers arming themselves still. And, the Padres love to, compete with the Dodgers. Just imagine being a team that's willing to be competitive, even though they're in a small market. I could see obviously the Padres doing it, but again, it would have to be an offer that blows them away. Where Soto was, they knew they were going to lose him. So they wanted to get something before losing him for nothing. The Padres, on the other hand, maybe they try to sign Cease next off season. But again, Preller has always given himself maximum flexibility. That's what makes him a really good a really good team president. Well, the White Sox were not eligible for the number 1 overall pick for the 2020-25 draft, but they do have the number 1 pick in today's Rule 5 draft, and let's discuss some players the Sox could take next on Locked On White Sox. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's number 1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And I always maintain FanDuel spreads, over, under, and money lines are fun to play. But if you want to win big or at least double your money, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures is the way to go. Right now, FanDuel has at plus 8,000 Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, each having 100-plus receiving yards and a touchdown or more in next Monday's Minnesota and Chicago game. $10 on that, and if it hits, could pay out $800. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So GM Chris Getz has indicated the Sox intend to take a player in the Rule 5 draft today. The Sox do hold the number 1 pick in all the rounds. I believe there's like 7 rounds. There's basically a major league round where if you take that player, they have to stay on the team's big league roster for the season or be returned to the original team for $50K. And the price to obtain the player is $100K. And then there's like the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft. That's basically anyone not protected on the big league roster or AAA roster is eligible. And it can be all the way down as long as they meet the criteria. That comes with a cost of selecting at $24,000. Players selected in this phase of the Rule 5 draft aren't subject to any roster restrictions with their new organizations. So basically, it's just you're paying to get a player. I hope the Sox take as many players as allowable under the rules. I believe it's just 2. They haven't had a lot of success, but they need to use this. This is a great way, a low-cost look, and hopefully adding a piece that can help them long term. basically think of it. It's $100,000 or $24,000. And I believe they're like an A ball. It's like $4,000. But this is a great way to add some more talent to a team that needs talent, and it's also a great way to possibly find some long-term bullpen help, as usually you can find a pitcher that is ready to make the jump. It's not to say a position player cannot make the leap, but it's kind of hard to obviously go from, like, say, hitting at AA to trying to hit at, the big leagues. That can be a challenge, especially how you have to be, throughout the season. Although now having a 26-man roster, basically that could be your 26 man and your, unofficial first pitch catcher, maybe a base, pinch runner. It's not like you're going to be putting them in for 150 games, although, hey, Josh Hamilton, but, showed up and went on to become an all-star. But, there are some players obviously out there that I think the Sox should be taking and that could help them, especially in the long run. And, SoxMachine.com's Jim Margulis and James Fox of Future Soxnet, they've got some excellent write-ups on some players they can take. So let's start with Jim, as he lists all pitchers that sound intriguing to me. He's got some hitters in there, but these are the ones that sound intriguing to me. Dom Hamill from the New York Mets. He has a good, strikeout rate did take a hit, but he's definitely a guy that fits the Brian Bannister, guy that Brian Bannister can mold. And that's what Jim has pointed out in his write-up. He's got that low attack angle for fastballs that can maybe get up in the zone, and maybe there's some adjustments that need to be made. But, if there's a guy that Brian Bannister can mold, that might be the guy. Miguel Ulola, I probably butchered that name, racked up 166 strikeouts over 127 1/3 innings in the minors, did walk 73 batters, but, he's been exceptional at limiting hits. And he is coming from Houston. And in the Texas League, hitters just hit 162. He's 22 years old. So that would be a guy that I would definitely want to take a look at. Jermaine Rosario, he's from the Dodgers. Again, the White Sox love the Dodgers' arms for some reason. Did walk 73 guys over 108 2/3 innings at AA Tulsa, but he did strike out 24 batters, 8 walks in the Arizona Fall League. So there's definitely some bullpen potential that they have yet to explore. And, maybe that might be a guy that could be in the White Sox, right up the White Sox house there, in their wheelhouse there. In terms of James Fox on FutureSox.net, he obviously lists Christian Franklin, the outfielder from the Cubs, 4th-round pick for the Cubs out of Arkansas in 2021, can play center field and can handle both corners. Mostly a bat-to-ball guy, but does have on-base ability, has some raw power, does have good swing decisions according to Fox. And, he's played 90th percentile exit velocity, so he hits the ball hard. And that's one of the things that new director of hitting, Ryan Fuller, likes. Definitely a plus runner on the bases. You want a guy that, has bat-to-ball skills that can put pressure on the defense. Posted 135 WRC plus in 98 games with AA Tennessee last season. Only hit 5 home runs. Has had some injury issues. MLB Pipeline also added on the Cubs number 21 prospect. He was one of the best athletes in the 2021 college crop. Went in the 4th round out of Arkansas, but missed his entire first forward pro season after tearing his patella tendon in his left knee in spring training. But he does have raw power. Solid speed once he gets going, and arm strength to match. He batted .268, .398, .366 with 5 homers, 34 steals, and 98 AA games, while providing capable defense at all 3 outfield positions. And Chris Getz did speak yesterday. I believe it was James Fegan or Josh Nelson who tweeted. Basically, it sounds like, or no, it was James Fox. It sounds like they're out on Oscar Colas. He was not glowing, and the 2 guys that were protecting him in the organization, according to Fox, are no longer in the organization. And it doesn't sound like Dominic Fletcher they're thinking very highly of either, because they basically said Austin Slater and Mike Tauchman are going to be playing. Getz said that they're going to be playing all over the field. So it sounds like they're kind of not high on either of those guys that could be potential backup options. So maybe you bring in Franklin to be the 4th or even the 5th outfielder, because then you could still have Zach DeLoach, in there if you're not high on Fletcher or Colas. By the way, free Colas. Brian Magdaleno Dominican southpaw with a ton of upside, 23 years old, threw 42 2/3 innings last year across 3 levels. Struck out 68 hitters. He can hit 90 on the gun, high 90s on the gun, has a sweeper, slider, and a sinker as well. Misses a lot of bats, according to Fox, gets a lot of ground balls, and he's very deceptive on the mound. More of a reliever profile again. So, again, go with guys that maybe can be reliever profiles. This is a great way to add, bullpen help at the cost of $100,000 to get them, and then at the minimum major league contract. And that's one that Fox thinks would definitely be a number 1 overall pick in the Rule 5 draft. Griff McGarry from the Philadelphia Phillies, doesn't have the greatest command, but he does have a really good fastball, can hit 99 miles per hour, and has a 80 miles an hour slider. So if you could just get him to command his pitches, this might be, again, a Brian Bannister project. This might be a guy with great gas to come out of the bullpen. Bobby Seymour from the Tampa Bay Rays, first base option. The Sox could maybe use a first baseman of the future option, and especially with Gavin Sheets now gone, this is a guy that maybe you could have just come off the bench. 26 years old, left-handed, hit 28 home runs across AA and AAA this past season. Posted 140 WRC plus in AAA. So that's another guy. Ryan Webb is another one that is perceived to be a maybe the top pick. Definitely another reliever from the Cleveland Guardians. Can't hurt to get a guy from the Guardians. And then finally, he lists outfielder AJ Vukovic from the Diamondbacks. And I also saw an MLB pipeline listing, like kind of the top player from each system that could be taken is Christian Robinson. So remember those 2 names because assistant GM Josh Barfield was the director of player development for the Arizona Diamondbacks before coming from the South Side. So those are some names that I would keep a lookout too. And the Sox could potentially lose Trey McGough and Anthony Hoopy Tuatuina. They're both relievers the Sox acquired in trades during the season. Well, it's Wayback Wednesday, and let's revisit one of the last times the Sox traded a pitcher at the winter meetings. And how did it work out? Let's discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as the show is available on all major podcast platforms. And hey, feel free to leave maybe a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. Again, I believe on Apple we're at 4.5. Let's get that rating up. I'm not drinking my coffee as much. And I believe we are building up a great YouTube community, except for, again, there's some trolls coming out again lately. And if you're a troll, first of all, make better arguments. If you make good arguments, then we have a conversation. Or that's the other thing. Not be like, well, how do you not know this, man? And then later say, well, I was just trying to start a conversation. That's not starting a conversation. And I love the guy that's accusing me of like Brewers bias and Cheesehead bias. Well, first of all, I think I've made it pretty clear that that's my backup team. And there's nothing wrong with having a backup team. If you're a White Sox fan and you don't have a backup team, I can't help you. You should have a backup team. Have you watched this team lately? There's nothing wrong with having a backup team. I'd say preferably in the National League. San Diego Padres would be a great backup team. The New York Mets, throwing them out there. Jeez, and it comes down to, again, my PSA. I know I've been talking a lot about the Garrett Crochet trades and even Luis Robert Jr., but you got to remember, if you're giving something up, you got to be prepared to lose something. And some teams are not at that point, okay? Just because you want something to be that way doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I understand if you want to form the world to make it make sense to you, that's fine, but don't lash out at other people then, okay? That's my PSA for the day. All right, anyway, there was a time when the White Sox were the buyers at the winter meetings. I mean, it seems like a lifetime ago, even though it was only 3 years ago. But that was when the White Sox acquired Lance Lynn from the Texas Rangers for Dane Dunning and pitching prospect Avery Weems. And for a bit, it did look like the White Sox clearly won the trade. But in the end, Lynn didn't help the Sox win the World Series. Dane Dunning did. So advantage Rangers. And you could say, how could you say that? Dane Dunning got demoted in 2024. Again, he helped the Rangers win the World Series. He was their pitcher of the year in 2023. Lance Lynn, helped the White Sox win a division title, and then get absolutely crushed in the ALDS. Okay. At the time of the deal, obviously the Sox were looking for another veteran, top of the rotation starting pitcher. Obviously they had Lucas Giolito, and Dallas Keuchel. They did have Dylan Cease and Dane Dunning, both right, that made their debuts. They just lost to the A's in the 2020 wild card round, 2-1. So the belief was, let's go get another veteran pitcher that can maybe put us over the top. But remember, this is the White Sox, so they had to do it cheaply. So Rick Hahn went out and got Lance Lynn from the Rangers. And it made sense, though, also because this is the White Sox, and Jerry Reinsdorf had to curse us with Tony La Russa again. And obviously Lynn had familiarity with La Russa when they, in the 2011 season when Lynn made his debut. And it wasn't like Lynn was a terrible pitcher. He was great in Texas. 3.57 ERA in 2 seasons and earning Cy Young votes in both. And, since he wasn't expensive and he was also willing to sign an inexpensive contract extension at the time, he made sense. And he was amazing in 2021. Made the All-Star team for the Sox. Posted a career-best 2.69 ERA. And he brought some personality to the clubhouse. And I loved how he stood up. I think it was Yermin Mercedes, when he stood up to Tony La Russa. And then, the famous La Russa, well, I have an office, he has a locker. But, he brought some personality. And I liked Lance Lynn for a while. But then he got absolutely smoked in Game 1 of the ALDS against the Houston Astros. Gave up 5 earned runs in 3 2/3 innings. He missed some time in 2022, and he was terrible, absolutely terrible in 2023. And he eventually got traded to the Dodgers. But he was also part of the toxic clubhouse issues in 2023. As ESPN's Buster Olney and Jesse Rogers reported, he clashed with closer Liam Hendricks. There was that part in that paragraph. They didn't say it was Lynn who was one of the players, but there was that where players scoffed at the idea of even coming to Liam Hendricks' press conference to announce he was in remission from cancer. Think about how toxic the clubhouse was. Dunning, well, it's not like he's been an outstanding pitcher for the Rangers. He's posted a 4.35 ERA in 4 seasons with a 4.2 B WAR during that time. That's total. And his FIP is 4.41, but he was their pitcher of the year in 2023 when Texas won the World Series. He was pitching in a swingman role, and he posted a 3.70 ERA. Obviously he was not good this season to the point he was demoted to AAA, but still, he helped the Rangers win a World Series. And the whole point that Lance Lynn was brought to the White Sox was to help them win the World Series. And instead, he helped contribute to the contention window, slamming abruptly shut. Weems, still in the minors, 27 years old. They did send him to the Arizona Fall League, so maybe there is something that the Rangers still see in him, but he's never made it to the big leagues. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I'll be back tomorrow to go over who the Sox took in the Rule 5 draft, and I want to talk about my displeasure with the MLB lottery system. And again, if Garrett Crochet is traded today, I will try to break in with either a live reaction episode or a quick bonus reaction episode. So just be on the lookout for that. And then obviously tomorrow, my show would be a reaction, full reaction to Crochet being traded. And I'd probably also get the host from whoever is on the, the team that the Sox, traded with from the Locked On host stable there. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding Dylan Cease's being available on the trade market, impacting Garrett Crochet's trade market, the Rule 5 draft prospects that the Sox could potentially take, and a Wayback Wednesday with when Lance Lynn came to the South Side. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.